Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here today for Saturday's show. Up on the hazardous weather map chart here, there's a winter weather advisory out for the upper Yukon Valley here. And that's for along the Steese Highway until 10 p.m. tonight. Had about 4 inches of snow fall in some areas through here today, and looking for another 2 inches tonight. And again, that's out until about 10 p.m. Then the Mid-Tanana Valley here, that's out for early this evening, looking for possibly another 1 to 2 inches of snow to fall along the Chena Hot Springs Highway road there. And then here for the upper Tanana Valley, that's out for the entire night tonight. And that's for additional snow, looking for another 3 inches tonight to fall throughout this area, but that's at elevations above 3,000 feet. So again, this one out the entire night tonight, Mid-Tanana Valley early this evening, and also this evening there along the Steese Highway for another couple inches of snow. Moving on to the satellite imagery of the western northwest Pacific area there. Got still kind of a pinwheel in the cloud pattern here dropping southward. That's low pressure. A little farther to the south and east. Actually, it's drifting off to the south and east from where it was yesterday. Actually, a little to the north and back to the west. But another feature here is this band of cloudiness down to the south. Looks like this will continue to move southeast, kind of interact with this area right here. And that should develop a pretty strong storm that will curve up toward Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula Monday afternoon with gale force winds along with it, and of course more rain, heavy at times. Over the southeast coast, you had a disturbance move across the area there with the heaviest precipitation occurring in the north, a lot less on down to the south. Had periods of rain from Yakutat along the North Gulf Coast right into south central Alaska, and then a band of moisture extending to the northeast there. Brought some rain into the Tanana Valley today, and then the area snow back up over the upper Yukon Valley, extending off to the southwest there to the Seward Peninsula, and mostly just cloudiness up here to the northwest, and then low pressure here over the southeast Bering Sea, keeping the showers in over the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and also there for the eastern Bristol Bay. And then there's that low center now. Again, that whole shower area a little bit farther to the south than it has been. That'll continue to drift off to the southeast over the next couple of days. Also looking at another system here from about Kodiak Island onto the southwest. That's caught up in that southwesterly flow aloft and will be carried right into the southeast coast later tonight. So it looks like here a break off the coast, which is already affecting some of the areas there. Still raining in Juneau, but that'll become more showery, and precipitation could possibly end in most of the areas this evening before the next batch of moisture rolls in later tonight and tomorrow. On the chart, there's that trough that swung through the area there and brought the rain earlier today, with rain back to the west into south central Alaska, and some mixed precipitation here depending on your elevation from the Alaska Range up into the Tanana Valley, and that band of snow going on from the upper Yukon Valley back across Galena into the Seward Peninsula with some light snow reported at Nome. Low pressure here near Kuskokwim Bay, that kept it showery and unsettled here across the southeast Bering Sea, the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, and the southwest coast. And pretty brisk winds, pretty gusty up there, gusting 35 to 40 miles per hour at Kaktovik and Dead Horse today. And then lighter winds over the central Arctic coast, and then the gradient tightens up again here in the northwest. Both Cape Lisburne and Point Hope seeing North to northeast winds gusting over 40 miles an hour today, with pretty brisk winds through the Bering Strait down to about St. Lawrence Island, but much lighter winds here across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Hardly much of a gradient at all out here. All the stronger winds are back to the west and on up to the north. And looking at the forecast for tonight, we'll see this front makes a pretty good stride up to the northeast there and spreads the rain back in to the panhandle again late tonight with increasing southeast winds there. Rain along the North Gulf Coast with periods of rain or showers here into the Kenai Peninsula area. South central Alaska kind of showery tonight, and then mixed precipitation here over the western and central interior areas with mostly in the form of snow up toward the eastern Brooks Range. Look for some light flurries and possible patchy fog here for the central Arctic coast on down into the west central North Slope areas. Low pressure is still holding off the southwest coast there. That's going to keep showers from St. Lawrence Island right down into western Bristol Bay. And then still some scattered showers here over the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea. That low center continuing to track off to the southeast a little bit there. And we'll see for tomorrow, still some lingering showers out here over the Aleutians, but winds mostly northerly there, 10 to 20 miles per hour. Still have this low near Nunivak Island there, kind of just meandering around out over the eastern Bering Sea. So scattered showers of rain or snow, probably mixed precipitation there over the higher terrain, but mostly showers here of the rain variety along the southwest coast up to about St. Lawrence Island. We have this trough axis up through this area, and south of that the precipitation swings both ways there, but to the north that'll stay mostly in the form of snow from the eastern Arctic coast with some light snow over the north slope down to the Seward Peninsula. Low pressure moves right up over northern Cook Inlet, and that front coming inland. So southeast winds in the morning hours become westerly along the coast during the afternoon, with periods of rain becoming more showery as that front moves through later tomorrow afternoon. But it looks pretty wet here for the North Gulf Coast. Some of that sneaking into the southern Copper River Basin, but amounts will be pretty light there. Look for a mostly dry day here over the upper Tanana Valley. Actually, most of the Tanana Valley right down in toward the lower and the lower Yukon and the Delta area there, with chance of some showers there over southwest Kodiak Island. And looking ahead to Monday, that low center, you just see the northern portion of it right here, that moves up onto the chart finally. And again, wind and rain spreading up toward Kodiak Island in the Alaska Peninsula. Looks like gale force winds arriving Kodiak Island as early as Monday afternoon or as late as Tuesday evening, with rain spreading northward over to the Alaska Peninsula, but a break here over south central Alaska. Still looking at some showery conditions from roughly the Chugach Mountains eastward to Yakutat. High pressure building in over the southern over much of the southeast coast there, trying to shut the precipitation completely off, but still some lingering showers, especially up around Elfin Cove, Juneau to Haines and Skagway and the northern areas there. Up to the north, an Arctic front drops down with some pretty good north winds, 25 knot north winds there along the eastern Arctic coast. That'll push that front right to the south side of the Brooks Range, and probably a narrow band of snow along with that, with some flurries following in behind, but pretty fair conditions with offshore flow for the western Arctic coast. Still have low pressure here southwest of Nunivak Island, so no change in the weather pattern there. Showery along the southwest coast and the Pribilofs, mixed rain and snow showers up over St. Lawrence Island, and a frontal system pushing in from the west with some small craft advisories, south and southeasterly winds and rain spreading in toward Kamchatka and Kiska, but kind of a weak ridge here over Adak and Atka for some light winds and possible clearing. Temperatures across the southeast coast today, mostly in the lower to mid 50s most areas, with 56 at Annette and 51 at Juneau. Lower 50s here along the North Gulf Coast, mostly in the 40s over south central Alaska on in toward Valdez, 41 at Gulkana, 38 both at Northway and Fairbanks, but Delta up to 45, 35 in Tanana, and 32 at Bettles, with 34 over Fort Yukon. Just 9 degrees mid-afternoon temperature at Anatuvik, with upper 20s to near 30 along the Arctic coast, lower to mid 30s here over the northwest areas, and the Seward Peninsula mostly in the upper 30s, with 34 at McGrath and 39 at Aniak, with or actually that sleep mute, 40 degrees at Bethel, 35 there at St. Mary's, and 36 at Macoriac. Lower 40s here for the Pribilof Islands, and 40s to near 50 out over the Aleutians with Atka at 50, the warmest location out there. Otherwise, upper 40s here for the eastern Aleutians, right up into northeast Bristol Bay. Lows for tonight in the 40s to lower 50s over the southeast coast, upper 30s to near 40 south central Alaska. Teens and 20s up along the Brooks Range to the Arctic coastal areas, and lower 30s here over the southwest interior, upper 30s to lower 40s Bristol Bay, milder across the Aleutians. Tomorrow's highs here, upper 40s south central Alaska, 50s again, just like today over the Panhandle, and about the same also up along the Arctic coast and the North Slope areas, with mid 40s, as high as the mid 40s in the Tanana Valley. Flying weather for tomorrow, marginal VFR with that front moving through, but in the afternoon improving along the coast there, with IFR up along the southeast interior areas, and also some IFR on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Look for a batch IFR here from the eastern Arctic coast southwestward into the Seward Peninsula, on out to the Bering Sea and southward to the Pribilofs. And then that kind of angles back into Bristol Bay with a lot of marginal conditions down to the Aleutians and out to the west. Passes Anaktuvuk, marginal VFR becoming IFR. And same forecast for Adigan, band of moisture shifting northward through the day, probably becoming IFR by late morning or into the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill, those conditions continue to be IFR on the eastern entrances. And rainy, marginal VFR. Windy, though, should be VFR, as well as Isabel and Mentasta. All those passes look VFR, at least right now at this point in time, with Tanita starting out VFR, becoming marginal as the moisture slips in from the east. Portage, IFR in the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal. Chilkoot and White, marginal. For the freezing level, still the warmest air aloft here, continuing over the Panhandle, but a little cooler, 6,000 to 8,000 feet there. That's down a couple of thousand feet from today. 2,000 feet through the central interior, and then a little bit of a cooler air mass and those northerly winds inching its way southward across the Bering Sea with, say, 3,000 feet here along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Icing possibilities here above with that front moving through. The icing moving through there above about 5,000 feet and then slipping back into south central Alaska. Another area of icing possibilities up here in the shaded areas from the eastern Arctic coast down across the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound, and then also out here over the central Aleutians. Looking at the jet stream, we've got dropping well to the south here around upper level low over the Aleutians, and then back southwest to northeast, and that's going to carry that next frontal system on up into the Panhandle late tonight and tomorrow, with kind of a still southeasterly flow here over south central Alaska. And at 9,000 feet, 20 to 30 knot winds, eastern Gulf of Alaska and the southeast coast. Pretty light and variable over the central interior. Northeasterlies 20 knots, increasing to 35 knots there across the Chukchi Sea, then dropping back towards St. Lawrence Island. Pretty much northerly winds out over the Bering Sea on down to the Aleutians of 15 to 20 knots. At 3,000 feet, low pressure right over south central Alaska. Southwest winds into the Panhandle, kind of light and variable again over the interior, with a more discernitive direction. Northeasterlies at 25 knots here, clipping St. Lawrence Island and dropping into the central Bering Sea, actually continuing across and south of the Aleutians there, but not too strong, just 15 to 20 knots in those areas. And this low could see some 25 knot winds here across the Barren Islands, possibly Kodiak Island as well. And you'll see that in the turbulence. With that, occasional moderate chop, below about 5,000 feet for Kodiak Island into the Gulf, coming up toward Cape Yakataga, but not really getting too far inland. Pretty smooth tomorrow over much of the interior. Central western Arctic coast has some turbulence possibilities there with a gusty northeast winds, but smooth over the Panhandle, and for the most part rather smooth here for the Aleutians as well. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
The beach on the southeast side of Montague Island stretches for nearly 80 miles of pristine wilderness. At least it looks pristine from a few thousand feet up. As our helicopter descends towards the shore, big chunks of white styrofoam come into view.
You can see all the big globs of styrofoam? That's all tsunami debris. Yeah, there's there's more styrofoam out here. There's no question.
Chris Pallister would know. He's president of the nonprofit Gulf of Alaska Keeper. The group has been cleaning up marine debris that washes onto Alaska's shores for 11 years. And when the tsunami debris began arriving last spring, their job got a whole lot harder. Pallister has visited Montague Island nearly a dozen times since then. And by the time we land and step onto the pebble beach, he's shaking his head in disgust.
I mean, you're basically standing in a landfill out here.
Pallister points to an area scattered with styrofoam bits smaller than packing peanuts.
So you see what's happening here with all the crushed up styrofoam now? This is what we're worried about. This styrofoam's just going to get all ground up. And you can see there's just be billions, trillions of little bits of styrofoam scattered all over everything.
The smaller it gets, the more concerning it is.
The smaller it gets, little pieces like this, it's virtually impossible to clean it up. I mean, to clean this up right here, you have to take out all this organic matter with it. And, you know, extrapolate that all up and down this coastline. It's kind of an impossible job.
The trash is not just an eyesore. Pallister says voles, birds, and even bears are eating the styrofoam and plastic. He's also worried about chemicals. Among the debris, he finds containers that held kerosene, gas, and other petroleum products. Even the little containers worry him. Sifting through the trash, he picks up a small blue bottle and unscrews the cap to inspect its contents.
I have no idea what this was. It looks like just dish soap, maybe, laundry detergent, but it's empty, which is maybe not a good sign. But there's thousands of bottles like this all up and down the coast, from small household chemical items to drums full of chemicals, big industrial-sized drums.
Marine debris is not a new issue in Alaska, but the Japanese tsunami has magnified the problem many times over. Pallister says the tsunami debris doesn't have the visceral impact of the Exxon Valdez spill, with oiled animals and blackened coastlines, but he thinks in the long run it could be a bigger environmental disaster.
In a lot of ways, it's a lot worse than the oil spill, both in the geographic scope of it and the chemicals that are coming with it. And who knows what the impacts are going to be. And they're going to be really difficult to measure because they're spread out spatially. And, you know, it's going to be a very difficult scientific issue to sort that all out, I think.
Officially, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has only recorded 20 tsunami debris items that have landed in Alaska, but the agency will only confirm an object if it has a unique identifier that can be traced back to Japan. The state of Alaska does not use the same strict standard. Last summer, the state paid for an aerial survey to inspect 2,500 miles of Alaska's coastline. Elaine Bussey-Floyd is acting director of the Division of Environmental Health. She says the survey identified tsunami debris all along the flight path from southern southeast up to Prince William Sound and out the Alaska Peninsula.
There was tsunami debris literally on every beach that was photographed. They took over 8,000 pictures, and it was more widespread and greater quantities than we even expected.
But so far, there has been minimal funding for cleaning up the debris. Governor Sean Parnell didn't include any tsunami debris funding in his budget. NOAA is figuring out how to distribute a $5 million gift from Japan, and Alaska's congressional delegation is working to get federal funds. But tsunami debris cleanup money was stripped from a bill for Hurricane Sandy relief that passed this week.
Look at this mess here.
Back on the beach, as the waves crash in, Chris Pallister says the debris could have serious impacts on fisheries and subsistence resources.
I don't know if it's being taken seriously enough. I don't think a lot of people that are going to be impacted by it know how bad it is right now. And until that gets out, maybe not much is going to happen. But I think we're kind of getting to the tipping point now where a lot of people in the state and federal agencies realize the gravity of this situation, and they're all working pretty hard now to get a handle on the scope of the problem and trying to develop funding sources. But as of yet, that hasn't happened. But it's a huge problem. It's going to take years to clean this mess up.
Pallister guesses it will take tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars to remove the debris. On this day, though, he has to leave it all on the island.
All right, we better go back.
Okay. We take off in the helicopter and head north along the beach. Pallister looks out the window at all the debris below and says it just goes on and on and on. On Montague Island, I'm Annie Fight. It's a brilliantly sunny day in early March, and Pallister's visiting Montague to get a handle on how much new debris washed up on the island over the winter. He also needs to check on debris his crew collected into heavy-duty bags called super sacks last summer. Pallister wants to make sure they held up over the punishing winter months. Pallister measures debris not by the pound, but by the ton. And on outer Montague Island, he estimates there's 20 to 30 tons of debris per mile. He guesses about half of it is from the tsunami and half is the usual marine trash that's been washing up in increasing amounts for decades. Last summer, he used funding from the legislature and other sources to begin cleaning up the first 3 miles of the island's coast.
There's another almost 70 miles to do on this shoreline. And we spent probably close to 60 days cleaning these few miles that we did here. So this is a huge, huge problem. This island is really bad.
The state identified Montague as one of 9 priority areas for tsunami debris cleanup. There are other hotspots from the southern tip of Southeast and as far west as the islands off of Kodiak. Japan gave the United States $5 million for cleaning up debris in all the West Coast states. So far, Alaska has received the biggest chunk of that money, $1 million. Alaska's situation is vast coastline, often inaccessible even to small landing craft, combined with huge quantities of debris. He says it will cost millions more just to clean Montague.
There's actually a lot of new stuff here. People always ask me, why do you do this? Why would you keep doing this if it keeps coming back? And I just tell them that you clean your kitchen counters. This is where we get our sustenance in this state. The intertidal area is where a lot of our fishing resources and all that came from. So I say this is our kitchen counter, and a rational person keeps their kitchen counters clean.
We start the day off tomorrow with south to southeast winds at about 25 to 30 knots here out along the coast. And then as the front moves through, these will all become west or west-southwesterly in the afternoon. And the outlook for Monday, westerly winds at about 15 knots here along the coast. So really lightening up again, high pressure building in over the area, at least at the surface. Light northwest breeze for Clarence Strait, and then southerlies at 15 knots here for the central and northern inner waters. And for Cook Inlet, north winds at about 10 knots tomorrow. Light breeze here for Kamishak Bay. Westerlies at 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, but southeast 20 knots for the central and eastern areas. Light winds for Prince William Sound. Westerlies up to 25 knots for Kodiak Island with 8-foot seas. And then on Monday, winds increase here at least to 30 knots Monday afternoon there for the east side of Kodiak Island. Northeast increasing to 25 knots. Shelikof Strait, winds also increasing here for the western North Gulf Coast up to small craft advisory levels there, but staying light for Prince William Sound and northern Cook Inlet, and only 15 knots for Kamishak Bay and the area south of the Forelands. And for Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea side of the peninsula here, southwesterly breezes at 15 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas, and southwest of Kodiak Island, southwesterlies at about 20 knots. And then for Monday, look for some gales here. Sitkinak over to about Chignik, then northeasterlies, still pretty brisk, 30-knot winds there with 13-foot seas. But on the north side here, easterlies at 20 for Bristol Bay, northeast increasing to 20 knots down the peninsula. And for the eastern Aleutians, pretty light winds, east to northeast, 10 to 15 knots there. And not too bad here over the central Aleutians as well, north to northeast, 15 to 20 knots, and then 20-knot northerlies out to the west. And then for Monday, winds northwest increasing to 25 knots there for the Fox Islands. Again, flat ridge coming through, so light winds out of the west here for Adak and Atka. And then southeast winds increasing to 25 knots as that next front approaches from the west out over that far western zone. And for the southwest coast, again, low pressure hanging just southwest of Nunivak Island. So we've got southwest breeze at 15 into Kuskokwim Bay, northeast 15 north of the island. stronger, considerably stronger there across St. Lawrence Island with 30-knot winds, small craft advisories down into the northern Bering Sea, lighter northwesterlies for the Pribilofs. And then for Monday, again, low pressure still off the coast, southeast winds 20 knots for the southwest coast. No change for the Pribilofs, but lighter winds up here around St. Lawrence Island. And for the eastern Arctic coast, gale warnings tomorrow, 35-knot winds there. Otherwise, small craft advisories here for the remainder of the Arctic coast. And then we've got some gales here from Wales up to Cape Thompson for 35-knot winds, freezing to heavy freezing spray in most areas. And for Monday, you've got gales from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort there with lighter winds on the central Arctic coast. And again, that Arctic front coming south, followed by some northerly winds at about 25 knots along the eastern stretch of the coastline. And for tonight, break this evening, and then after midnight, chances of rain increase here along the southeast coast as well, with winds starting to pick up again out of the southeast. Periods of rain for the North Gulf Coast back into south central Alaska. Will be a little more showery tonight. Chance of some moisture down to Kodiak Island. Low pressure and showers here along the southwest coast. Scattered areas of light rain or snow over the interior. That'll be mostly in the form of snow up to the northeast there. And then showers continue here over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, but the bulk of the moisture shifting to the southeast there. And those will still be scattered here over the Aleutians tomorrow. No change in the southwest there. And that front edging its way inland. Again, in the afternoon, those winds will become westerly along the coast with periods of rain tending to become more showery late in the day there for the Panhandle, but wet for the North Gulf Coast, and showers or rain into south central Alaska. Got some moisture with this trough up to the north and northwest with some breaks. Could be a pretty good day here across the Tanana Valley. And then the big storm approaches Kodiak Island on Monday.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.